Dun 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 dun. I absolutely hate week 3 NFL power rankings every year, but this year is even more insane because of all the upsets and crazy stuff that happened this last week. It makes these things absolutely worth nothing. What you see right now will be nothing compared to what it is in week 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, but here we are nonetheless doing them. After the craziness that ensued, is there overreactions? Should some teams be placed higher, lower? Where should they go? Nobody knows right now. Nobody knows who's a fraud, who's going to develop, what's going to happen. Nobody has a clue. But here we are trying to make sense to it. So what I do on my week 3 power rankings, I try not to do too much in-depth analysis. I'm just going to give you who they beat, small little line, who they're facing next, and then we'll let the next couple weeks develop. But I do like to track it and go through it. It's fun for me. So if you don't mind, please hit that like button. Please subscribe and comment. I'm trying to put a lot of good stuff out there for you guys. I appreciate you tuning in. And those who haven't watched before, my top 14, you'll see a difference, are always going to be split 7 AFC, 7 NFC, because that's how the playoffs are. There might be 8 NFC players that are better than the top 7 AFC players or vice versa. But I'm always going to put 7 AFC and 7 NFC to get a look at what the playoff picture might look like. So right off the bat, I'm going to show you guys what the biggest riser and biggest faller were from last week after the Vikings' huge win against the Niners. I had to raise them up, and I jumped them 14 spots after going undefeated, starting 2-0. And the Colts are my biggest faller. I probably overhyped them a little bit to start the season. They're looking a little flat, especially on their run defense. So they've dropped 9 spots this week. I'll pull my face off the screen. I know this is really little up there. I realize that. But there's the full breakdown of the entire standings of the entire NFL. It's got all the teams. You've got Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Houston, the Chargers, the Chiefs, Seattle, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, Minnesota as your undefeated teams, and the defeated teams are the Giants, the Panthers, the Rams, the Broncos, the Titans, the Jaguars, the Colts, the Ravens, the Bengals, all undefeated. So that's a look at the entire standings. I know that's kind of small. Hopefully you can zoom in. If not, I give you a little piece of who's the undefeated and the defeateds. And with that, we'll jump right into our rankings, and we'll start off where we were last week. At number 32, we're going to have the Carolina Panthers again. They're 0-2 after losing to the Saints in week 1 and the Chargers in week 2. Both opponents are looking tougher than they originally thought. The Panthers have now benched Bryce Young in what appears to be a clear attempt to save him from being murdered by Max Crosby. We'll see if the Red Rifle can pull the Panthers out of the gutter. The Giants are at number 31. 0-2 after losing to the Vikings and the Commanders. We'll see if their kicker can be healthy enough to not lose a game for them when they face the Browns on the road in week number 3. At number 30, the Broncos lost in week 1 to the Seahawks and then to the Steelers at home. I don't have much hope for the Broncos going on the road in week 3 against the Buccaneers, so expect to see the Broncos at number 30 in this exact same spot next week when they start their second consecutive season at 0-3. At number 29, the Titans seem like a team that could climb out of the bottom with the smallest amount of offensive help. Their defense has been really solid. Defense is doing their part, but Will Levis is looking like he's clueless when it comes to playing quarterback. The Titans defense did their parts in both week 1 loss to the Bears and week 2 loss to the Jets. Green Bay at home will be a big opportunity for the Titans to get their first win. At number 28, the Patriots fans might be upset with me for being so low after beating the Bengals in week 1 and then losing to the Seahawks in overtime in week 2, and I won't blame them. The Patriots defense looks way better than you expected them to. If they can beat the Jets on Thursday night on the road, I'll have no option but to have to move them up in the rankings, and I hope my hand is forced to do so. At number 27, I've got the Commanders ranked, even after they're hot off their win and narrowly beating the Giants in week 2. They lost to the Buccaneers in week 1 and probably should be a little bit higher, but with last week's crazy upsets, the Commanders only beating the Giants, can't move them any higher. A win against the Bengals in primetime, though, would move them in the rankings next week for sure. At number 26, I've got the Jaguars, and they're headed the wrong way in the rankings. They didn't look terrible in Week 1's loss to the Dolphins, but looked flat in Week 2's loss to the Browns. A Week 3 matchup against the Bills in Buffalo doesn't look very promising for the Jaguars to get any momentum. Should see them right around here, maybe even lower in Week 4. At number 25, the Cardinals are climbing in the right direction after a huge win over the Rams. Week 1's loss to the Bills was close, very close, and appears that the Cardinals could be the pesky team that could pull off some surprising upsets throughout the year. A Week 3 matchup against the Lions at home could be very intriguing to see which direction the Cardinals are heading. They could be a surprise team this year. At number 24, the Raiders just came off a huge win against the Ravens. They probably should be ranked a little bit higher, but this offense can't be carried completely by Davante Adams every week, so this is a wait-and-see situation with eagerness to rank them higher if they show continued signs of life. They were completely flat Week 1 against the Chargers, but after a win against the Ravens, they get their first home game of the season against the Panthers and should have ample opportunity to get some things clicking on offense. At number 23, I've got the Colts ranked. They're my biggest drop in the rankings this week. Their game against the Packers was embarrassing. It was an epitome of a game where they beat themselves against a severely weaker opponent. When they finally started trying to play with just a few minutes left in the game, they didn't look terrible, but it was way too little too late. They didn't look close to being the team that played the Texans in Week 1 tight. We'll see if their run defense can improve when they play the Bears in Week 3. Right above them is the team that just beat them. The Packers come in at the number 22 spot. There's absolutely nothing positive I can say about the Packers except they're really well coached. Expect the Titans defense line to give the Packers a rude awakening in Week 3. Seahawks fans might be upset with me. They probably will be upset with me after not ranking them higher than 21, and honestly that's fair after going undefeated. But against some really low-quality opponents. They beat the Broncos in Week 1, the Patriots in overtime in Week 2. Beating the Dolphins at home, though, in Week 3 would go a long way to proving their undefeated record is legitimate, even with the Dolphins a little bit beat up. At number 20 is the Cleveland Browns. After losing to the Cowboys in Week 1, they went to Jacksonville in Week 2 and beat the Jaguars. I'm not impressed with anything but the Browns' secondary so far, but they should have an easy matchup with the Giants coming to Cleveland in Week 3, so expect them to stay pat there or maybe even rise a little bit depending on how other teams fall. At number 19, I was high on the Rams to start this year, so I'm probably over-ranking them a little here at 19. After losing Puka Nacua last week, the Rams just put Cooper Kupp on the IR as well, so they could be going in the wrong direction quick. They lost a close one in Week 1 to the Lions, but were absolutely manhandled by the Cardinals in Week 2. Week 3 won't be any easier with the Niners coming to town, but if they don't want to keep spiraling lower on the rankings, they're going to have to win one here somewhere. The Chargers may seem a little low at number 18, but their quality of opponents is what's holding me back from ranking them higher. They did take care of business against both the Raiders and the Panthers in Week 1 and 2, but haven't convinced me they're a legitimate threat yet, even though they're undefeated. A fun matchup of undefeateds in Week 3 will show some character for this team as they take on the high-powered defense of the Steelers in Week 3. The Jets at number 17 looked every bit overhyped in their Week 1 loss to the 49ers. Week 2 looked much better for them as they took care of business against a very stout Titans defense. Thursday Night Football gives them a home game against the Patriots in an early division matchup and will be a key win for one of these two teams to take a step forward in the division. The Bears dropped more than a handful of spots last week as they fall to number 16. After keeping it close with one of the best teams in the league in Week 2, but I can't keep them in the playoff rankings as long as the offense can't get clicking. The offense looks bad, and the line of the offense is terrible. The defense is carrying the Bears, but they'll have to get the run game going if they expect to start putting up any points to help the defense out. A win against the Titans in Week 1, a loss in the Texans in Week 2. They'll face the Colts in Week 3 in Indianapolis. The Cowboys defense refused to show up the entire first half against the Saints. That has them dropping to number 15. It looked like they were on extended vacation. They can't have that Week 3 when they face the hungry Ravens at home. A Week 1 win against the Browns, a bad loss to the Saints in Week 2. Let's see what they show up with against the Ravens in Week 3. All right, for our playoff teams, remember, 7 from each division regardless. So at 14, I have the Bengals squeaking in despite being 0-2. Their loss to the Chiefs felt like what could have been A situation and the loss to the Patriots is looking semi-respectable. Well, maybe not, but at least the Patriots are looking like they might be a legitimate defensive team. Week 3 is definitely considered a must-win at home versus the Commanders if they want to stay in the top of the rankings. With a huge win last night, the Falcons catapulted into number 13 spot after losing to the Steelers in Week 1. The Falcons narrowly beat the Eagles. Take that back. Falcons narrowly beat the Eagles in Week 2 to show they're serious about contending in the NFC South this year. A Week 3 matchup at home versus the Chiefs could be huge for this team. At number 12, I've got the New Orleans Saints. Yes, there's going to be 3 NFC South teams in the playoff rankings this week. It doesn't make any sense to me either, and there's no way it can stay this way, right? But after beating the Panthers handily in Week 1, I still overlooked the Saints, but when they hammered the Cowboys, you have to notice that Clint Kubiak is doing something special with the Saints. A Week 3 matchup against the Eagles is absolutely huge for the Saints, and I'm pulling for the Saints to get that upset. The number 11 Dolphins might be in for some rough waters after losing Tua to yet another concussion. Beating the Jaguars Week 1 doesn't show much, and Week 2's loss was a heartbreaker after losing Tua. But even before he went down and out, they didn't look good against the Bills' secondary. Traveling the farthest distance this week to Seattle without Tua doesn't look promising for the Dolphins. The number 10 Eagles narrowly lost to the Falcons last night, and honestly, they didn't look amazing against the pathetic Packers on Week 1 either. Maybe they had jet lag from the trip to Brazil, but because they've got to go to New Orleans Week 3 to face the highest functioning offense of the year so far in the Saints, things could get ugly quick for the Eagles if they don't start putting something together. Number 9 has the Pittsburgh Steelers riding or welding high after wins against the Falcons and Broncos. Justin Fields and Josh Allen are the only 2 quarterbacks to have undefeated teams that haven't had a turnover so far this year. So efficiency is the key for the Steelers. An undefeated matchup with the Chargers in Week 3 will show a lot about this offense and defense moving forward. Number 8 is the biggest jump of the week with the Minnesota Vikings. A Week 1 win against the Giants was expected, but they did take care of business. Week 2 was a statement game with a win against the 49ers. There's no way I couldn't jump them 14 spots after they beat the reigning NFC North champions who appeared like they're heading there again. Week 3 is a huge test against the Houston Texans at home. The winner of this game won't just be undefeated, but will carry major momentum early in the season. Number 7 stays in the same division with the Detroit Lions. The Lions took their lumps after a Week 2 loss to the Buccaneers. The win against the Rams in Week 1 doesn't look as impressive as it did before, but the matchup against the Cardinals in Week 3 is more important than ever now. With a common opponent to gauge them, this won't be a cakewalk. The Lions beat the Rams in overtime by 6 points, while the Cardinals beat the Rams in the first 6 minutes of the game of last week, ending it with a thumping 41-10 over the Rams. Number 6 is the team that just beat the Lions in Week 2 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They weren't a one-hit wonder last year, as they've already started off the year undefeated in 2024, beating the Commanders in Week 1 and knocking off the Lions in Week 2. The Buccaneers are looking strong. Week 3 should be an easier matchup as they head to Florida with the Broncos coming to Florida against them. Number 5, I've got the Ravens hanging on by a thread, and I agree number 5 is way too high to have an 0-2 team, but we're 2 weeks into the season, and I don't have any doubt the Ravens are making the playoffs. A tough loss Week 1 to the Chiefs by a toe, followed by a last-second loss to the Raiders Week 2. I don't believe the Ravens are a bad team. Week 3 traveling to Dallas will be a test, and if they want to prove they're a top 5 team, they're going to have to beat the Cowboys on the road. Number 4 was yet another surprise losing team from last week. The Niners went to Minnesota and lost where they don't appear they're ever able to win. They did beat the Jets Week 1, and now they'll need to travel south to face the division rival Rams to get back on track. Number 3 is the high-flying Texans. Narrow wins in both Week 1 against the Colts and Week 2 against the tough Bears. Defense are going to leave the Texans eager to prove themselves a legitimate contender. They'll get their wish Week 3 as they have to travel to Minnesota to take on the Vikings that just knocked off the 49ers. All right, at number 2, the Bills have moved up yet another spot, and even I feel like number 2 might be too high for the Buffalo Bills this early in the season. But after beating the Cardinals and Dolphins, the Bills look ready for a challenge. They look ready for any challenge, to be honest. I don't know if the Jaguars will give them any type of that challenge in Week 3, but that's who they're going to face. And at number 1, you've got the reigning Super Bowl champions yet again holding down that number 1 spot. Kansas City Chiefs. Thanks to some decent play and a lot of help from the refs. A week 1 win against the Ravens and a week 2 squeaker against the Bengals don't fill me with super confidence for them, but they do look good. They're getting the job done. Week 3 just might be a tougher test than they originally thought when they traveled to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. All right, so new videos will be out each Tuesday for power rankings, each Wednesday for weekly predictions. Give me your thoughts on which rankings I got right, which ones I got wrong. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate you guys. If you haven't by now, please hit the like button. I do appreciate your help with the algorithm thingy. It does spread it around. Subscribe if you haven't. Just hit that little button. Just push the little button, subscribe. I want to grow the channel. I appreciate you guys checking it out. I appreciate you liking my takes and interacting with me in the comments. And if you don't mind, put a comment. Let me know what you think. I might be right. You might be right. Either way, it's fun to interact. And so until next week, good luck, and we'll see you then.